You know the moment you're sitting outside in the early morning, coffee in hand, and a cardinal lands on the wooden fence not 10 feet from where you sit. It tilts its head. It looks at you. Not past you, not through you, directly at you. And for a few seconds, neither of you moves. The whole yard holds still. You have had that moment, maybe not with a cardinal. Maybe a robin on the stone bird bath or a blue jay on the wooden railing watching you the way nothing else ever watches you. There's something in that gaze that makes you stop whatever you were doing. Something that makes the rest of the morning feel different in a way you never quite know how to explain. You did not imagine it. That bird was not randomly sitting there. It chose that fence post. It chose that moment. And whether you realized it at the time or not, it chose you. Birds do not visit yards at random. Researchers at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology have documented that wild birds develop location fidelity to specific properties over multiple seasons and years. They return to the same feeders, the same bird baths, the same perches on the same wooden fences. They map your yard into their territory the way you map your home into your daily life. But it goes deeper than territory. A study from the University of Exeter found that garden birds develop individual responses to specific humans over time based on repeated careful observation and assessment. The birds in your yard know you. They recognize your movement, your clothing, your pace. The cardinal on your fence has already decided what kind of person you are before you even notice it. And here's the part most people never consider. While you're watching that bird on the wooden fence, the bird is watching you back. It is evaluating your yard, judging your space. That is the reversal nobody talks about. You think you're the one observing nature through your kitchen window. But every morning, nature has been observing you and deciding whether to stay. In West African tradition, birds that frequent a compound carry ancestral blessings. Their continued presence signals that the household has earned protection. Their departure means something has gone quietly wrong. Native American teachings describe birds as messengers between realms. A bird that returns to your home day after day is believed to be watching over the people who live inside that space. Even in modern suburban neighborhoods, elderly residents describe an instinctive unease when familiar birds stop appearing. They feel something shifting before they can name it. The yard feels hollow somehow. This is not sentimental thinking. This is an ancient exchange. The bird gives its presence and watchfulness. The yard gives sanctuary and reliable nourishment. Both sides hold up their end of the agreement. But what happens when you unknowingly break that agreement? What happens when a well-meaning homeowner makes simple mistakes that slowly poison the trust a bird placed in their yard? The bird does not complain. It does not give you a second chance to correct what went wrong. It simply stops coming. And the silence that follows is heavier than you ever expected. 10 common mistakes are quietly killing the birds that chose your yard. Some of them look completely harmless. A few of them even look generous and thoughtful from the outside. Every single one has a simple fix. None require money, none require expertise. They only require the willingness to see what your yard is actually doing to the creatures that trusted it. The birds on your fence right now are counting on you to understand this. Stay with me. What comes next may change what your yard looks like to them by tomorrow morning. The first mistake. Dirty bird feeders. That wooden feeder hanging from the backyard oak tree looks charming and generous. But underneath the surface, it can become a bacterial death trap. When seeds sit in a feeder through rain and humidity, mold colonies form within 48 hours. The mold produces toxins that attack a bird's liver and respiratory system slowly from the inside. A finch lands on a moldy feeder tray and eats contaminated seeds without any visible sign of distress. It flies away looking perfectly healthy, but internally the damage has already started spreading. Within days, that finch weakens. It cannot maintain its body temperature. It sits fluffed and still on a branch near a garden trellis, feathers puffed, and slowly it stops eating entirely. The fix takes 5 minutes. Scrub every feeder with hot water and a stiff brush once every 2 weeks. Remove old clumped seeds before adding fresh ones. Let the feeder dry completely. A clean feeder is a living invitation. It tells visiting birds your yard respects the exchange. When you maintain it faithfully, the birds register that consistency and they keep coming back to it. The second mistake, uncovered windows. A large glass window on a brick house reflects the sky and trees so perfectly that birds cannot distinguish the reflection from actual open flyable space. Researchers at the American Bird Conservancy estimate that nearly 1 billion birds die from window strikes in residential areas every year. The bird sees a clear path and flies directly into solid glass. A robin carrying a worm approaches a reflective kitchen window at full speed. The impact breaks its neck on the concrete patio below. The homeowner finds it the next morning beside a clay pot. The fix requires only simple window decals or ultraviolet stickers placed on the outside of the glass. Birds see ultraviolet light and will recognize the barrier before they ever reach it. Hanging wind chimes from a wooden porch beam near large windows also breaks up the dangerous reflection. These small changes save dozens of birds every single season without requiring any real effort. A window that kills birds is a disrupted threshold. In many spiritual traditions, windows represent the boundary between the inner and outer worlds. A deadly window distorts that sacred boundary completely. The third mistake, chemical pesticides sprayed on lawns and garden beds. A freshly treated lawn looks pristine and green, but it is saturated with compounds that are lethal to small birds. A thrush hops across treated grass near a stone bird bath, pulling earthworms from the soil. Every worm it eats carries concentrated pesticide residue stored inside its body tissue from the ground. The chemicals accumulate in the bird's organs over days. It becomes disoriented. It loses the ability to fly straight. Eventually, it cannot navigate back to its roost when the light fades at dusk. The fix is switching to organic pest control. Neem oil, diatomaceous earth, and companion planting eliminate pests naturally without leaving toxic residue in the soil that feeds your visiting birds. A yard free from chemical pesticides becomes a genuine sanctuary. Birds detect clean environments quickly. They preferentially return to spaces where the soil and water remain uncontaminated and safe for feeding. When you stop poisoning your soil, you restore the integrity of the ground beneath your feet. The earthworms return healthy. The birds follow. The entire chain of life begins quietly healing. The fourth mistake, allowing domestic cats to roam freely outdoors. A tabby crouching beneath a wooden garden bench is not simply playing. It is an apex predator locked into its hunting instinct. A landmark study from the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute found that free-roaming domestic cats kill approximately 2.4 billion birds annually in the United States alone. Even well-fed cats hunt. A sparrow drinking from a shallow clay dish on the ground never sees the cat approaching from behind the row of bushes. The attack takes less than 2 seconds from the first step. The fix is keeping cats indoors or building enclosed outdoor spaces called catios. These structures let cats enjoy fresh air and sunlight without endangering any of the wildlife visiting your yard. If indoor only is not possible, a brightly colored collar with a bell gives birds a few extra seconds of audible warning. Those seconds are frequently the difference between a clean escape and death. A yard where a predator hunts the birds that chose to visit creates a fundamental conflict in the space. It cannot be both a hunting ground and a sanctuary. You have to decide which. The fifth mistake, leaving standing water unchanged for days. That decorative stone bird bath in your garden looks beautiful and inviting, but stagnant water breeds dangerous bacteria and mosquito larvae rapidly. Birds drinking from stagnant water ingest pathogens that cause avian trichomoniasis. This disease creates painful lesions inside the throat that eventually prevent the bird from being able to swallow any food. A goldfinch visits a neglected bird bath covered in green algae near a wooden pergola. It drinks deeply. Within 10 days, that bird starves to death because it physically cannot swallow anything anymore. The fix is refreshing bird bath water every single day. Scrub the basin weekly with a stiff brush. In summer, add a small solar-powered fountain to keep the water moving continuously against bacteria. Moving water attracts more birds and prevents bacterial growth at the same time. A clean bird bath is one of the most powerful bird-saving additions any homeowner can place in their outdoor space. Clean water in a yard symbolizes renewal in nearly every spiritual tradition. Offering fresh water to birds that visit your home is considered one of the simplest and most genuine acts of care. The sixth mistake: removing every dead tree and fallen branch from your property. A standing dead trunk looks untidy to human eyes, but to birds it serves critical functions they cannot replace. Woodpeckers, owls, and dozens of smaller species depend entirely on dead trees for nesting cavities. A chainsaw removing a dead oak beside a gravel pathway destroys homes that took years to establish. Without nesting cavities, birds search for alternatives in increasingly scarce habitat. Many cannot find replacements. Their breeding success drops dramatically, and local populations begin a quiet, irreversible decline each season. The fix is leaving at least one dead tree standing if it poses no safety hazard. Even a single tall stump provides nesting, roosting, and foraging opportunities for multiple bird species at the same time. Fallen branches stacked loosely in a garden corner near a wooden fence create natural shelter for ground nesting birds and the insect populations that feeding birds depend on through the colder winter months. A dead tree in your yard represents the cycle of life continuing after visible death. It shelters new generations inside its hollow frame. Removing it removes more than just wood. It removes a nursery, the seventh mistake, leaving bright outdoor lights on all night. A powerful security floodlight mounted on a garage wall disrupts the natural darkness that migratory birds depend on for safe navigation. Millions of migrating birds travel at night using stars and magnetic fields for direction. Bright artificial lights disorient them completely. They circle the source until they collapse from sheer physical exhaustion. A cluster of warblers flying south over a suburban neighborhood encounters a row of bright porch lanterns along a fence line. They circle for hours, burning energy reserves meant for hundreds of remaining miles. The fix is switching to motion-activated outdoor lighting and shielding permanent fixtures so light points downward only. During peak migration months, reduce all outdoor lighting to the absolute minimum. Darkness is not emptiness. For birds, darkness is the highway they travel safely. When you protect the darkness around your home, you protect ancient migration routes that sustain entire species across continents. Unnecessary light at night represents resistance to natural cycles. Allowing darkness to return around your home honors the rhythm of the earth and every creature that navigates the sky by its silence. The eighth mistake: planting only one type of ornamental shrub across your entire property. A uniform row of identical hedges along a stone wall may look organized, but it offers birds nothing. No variety of seeds, no diverse insect populations, no layered canopy for shelter from weather or predators. A monoculture lawn is the ecological equivalent of an empty room with no furniture and no food. A yard with only decorative boxwood provides zero food sources for native songbirds. They pass over it entirely, searching for yards with native plants that produce the berries and insects they actually need. The fix is introducing native plant species appropriate for your region. Even 3 different native shrubs planted near a wooden garden gate dramatically increases the number and variety of visiting bird species. Native plants attract native insects, which attract native birds. This cascading effect transforms a sterile ornamental yard into a functioning ecosystem within just 1 or 2 growing seasons of patient attention. A diverse garden mirrors abundance. When your yard offers many forms of nourishment, it becomes a place where life multiplies. The birds recognize genuine generosity in a landscape and respond to it. The ninth mistake: leaving loose garden netting, fishing line, or string accessible in your yard. A tangled ball of twine near a wooden shed looks like harmless clutter to a person walking past. But birds frequently become entangled in loose netting and fiber. Their legs, wings, and necks wrap around thin threads. The harder they struggle to free themselves, the tighter the binding becomes around them. A wren gathering nesting material near a coiled garden net catches one foot in the mesh. It thrashes against a metal fence post but cannot pull free. The struggle can last hours before ending. The fix is removing all loose netting when not in active use. Store twine and string inside closed containers. Replace open mesh fruit covers with solid or wildlife-safe alternatives before birds encounter them. Check fence lines regularly for dangling threads or wire fragments. Even a single loose strand along a wooden rail can trap and slowly kill a small bird that never saw the danger coming. A yard free from entanglement hazards honors the freedom birds carry. Tangled traps in a space that should be safe create suffering that is entirely preventable with 5 minutes of careful, honest attention. The 10th mistake, starting a feeding routine and then abruptly stopping it. That bird feeder on the metal pole beside the brick wall becomes part of a bird's survival calculation within just weeks. When you consistently fill a feeder for months, local birds restructure their entire foraging patterns around your yard. They reduce exploration of other food sources because yours becomes their most reliable one. Then you leave for vacation and the feeder sits empty and dusty, or you lose interest and stop buying seed. The birds arrive each morning to an empty station where food used to be. During harsh winter months, this sudden absence can kill. Birds that depended on your feeder have limited energy reserves. They cannot rebuild abandoned foraging routes in freezing temperatures quickly enough to survive. The fix is committing to consistency once you begin. If you start feeding birds, maintain the feeder through critical winter months at minimum. Ask a neighbor to refill it during any extended absence. An abandoned feeder is a broken promise to a living creature. The birds built their survival around your word. When you honor that commitment faithfully, they return it with presence you feel every morning. Now step back and look at all 10 mistakes together. Notice the pattern? Every single one involves a person disrupting something natural through simple ignorance rather than through any deliberate cruelty. These are not acts of hatred, they are acts of blindness. And that is exactly what makes them so quietly devastating. Unintentional harm still produces real and lasting consequences in the living world. When birds leave a yard permanently, something measurable changes beyond their absence. Gardens produce fewer fruits, insect populations shift. The entire small ecosystem around the home begins destabilizing in ways you feel. Researchers at the University of Exeter found that people living near active bird populations report significantly lower anxiety and stronger feelings of connection to their surroundings than those living in bird-absent areas. When the birds leave your yard, that invisible support system vanishes with them. The mornings feel different. The air near the empty trellis feels heavier. Something alive in the background goes permanently quiet. This is not imagination. Birds contribute sound movement and biological diversity that directly affects plant growth, soil health, and the psychological well-being of every human resident living within earshot. Spiritually, a yard without birds is considered a yard without guardians. In many African and Asian traditions, the absence of birds near a dwelling signals that protective forces have quietly withdrawn from the home. Elders in Yoruba tradition observe which birds frequent a compound and read their behavior as ancestral messages. When those birds depart, it is understood as a serious warning that something needs to be corrected. Japanese spiritual practice holds that birds near a home indicate harmony between visible and invisible worlds. Their disappearance suggests the household has unknowingly disrupted a balance it did not know it maintained. The message across cultures is remarkably consistent. Birds do not simply decorate your yard. They participate in an ongoing exchange with your home that requires conscious respect and faithful daily maintenance. But here's what nobody tells you, and this may be the most important thing in everything you have just heard. Every single one of those 10 mistakes is completely and fully reversible starting today. The damage is real, but it is not permanent. The birds have not written off your yard forever. They are nearby right now. They are checking your property periodically, testing whether anything has changed. Researchers at Cornell Lab of Ornithology have documented that birds revisit previously abandoned feeding sites on a regular cycle, testing whether conditions have improved enough to justify returning and rebuilding trust. They remember your yard. They remember the feeder, the bird bath, the fence post where they used to sit each morning. They are waiting to see if the place that welcomed them becomes safe again. When a bird returns to a yard it previously abandoned, something profound happens. It means the space has changed. It means whatever was broken has been repaired. It means trust is being rebuilt. Spiritual practitioners across many traditions call this restoration. The household has realigned its energy. The guardians resume their watch. The invisible exchange between bird and home begins flowing once more. This does not happen overnight. It requires patience and consistent corrected behavior over weeks and sometimes months. But the birds notice, they always notice, and they return when trust rebuilds. That cardinal that stopped visiting your wooden fence can return. That robin that abandoned the stone bird bath can come back, but only if you remove the specific obstacles that drove each one away. The question is not whether the birds will forgive your yard. They will. The question is whether you will do the quiet, steady work of earning back what was lost through simple, unintentional neglect. Right now, while you're listening to this, a bird somewhere near your property is watching it, is assessing your space, deciding whether today is the day your yard becomes worthy of its trust. Start with one fix today, just one. Pick the mistake from this list that applies most directly to your yard and correct it before the sun goes down tonight. Clean the feeder, change the water. Move the netting, turn off the floodlight, whichever action fits your situation. Take it now while the awareness is fresh and the willingness is still here. Then tomorrow address a second mistake, and the day after that a third. Within 2 weeks, your yard can transform from a place of hidden danger into something the birds recognize as safe. You do not need expensive equipment or professional landscaping. You need only the willingness to look honestly at what your yard has been doing to the birds that chose to trust it with their lives. Watch what happens in the weeks that follow. Pay attention to which species start appearing. Notice new songs at dawn that were not there before. Count the visitors at the feeder each morning. Every new bird that arrives is confirmation that your yard is healing. Every returning species is proof that the trust you damaged is being slowly and faithfully rebuilt through your daily consistent actions. Share what you learn with your neighbors. A single safe yard surrounded by dangerous ones limits what birds can achieve. But connected safe yards create corridors of protection across entire neighborhoods. Imagine your whole street becoming a place where birds nest and raise their young safely each spring. Imagine the dawn chorus growing louder every year because every household fixed just a few simple deadly mistakes. That vision is completely achievable. It starts with one person making one correction in one yard on one afternoon, and that person standing in their garden looking at the feeder can be you. Now remember the moment we started with. You sitting outside in the early morning, coffee in hand, a cardinal landing on the wooden fence not 10 feet from where you sit, head tilted. That moment was never random. That bird was not passing through by accident. It had evaluated your yard over days and weeks and decided that your space was worthy of its presence and attention. Every morning that bird returned was a confirmation. Every song from that fence post was an endorsement of the life you had built around your home. You earned that relationship without realizing you were earning it. And if that bird stopped coming, it was not because it forgot you. Something small changed in the yard. Something invisible to you that crossed a threshold the bird could not ignore. Now you know what those invisible things are, 10 of them, all fixable. All within your power to correct today without spending money or calling anyone or changing anything dramatic about your life. Your yard is more than soil and grass. It is a threshold between your world and theirs. What you do with that space determines what crosses that boundary every single morning at dawn. Honor the birds. Fix the mistakes. Maintain the small daily commitments that tell the living world around your home this place can be trusted. The birds are listening. They have always been listening. And one morning soon, if you do the work, you will step outside with your coffee and a cardinal will land on that same wooden fence again. It will tilt its head and look directly at you. This time, you will understand what that look means. Not a greeting, not a coincidence, a verdict, a small wild creature telling you with its presence that your yard has passed its test. If a bird ever returned to the same spot in your yard and looked at you like it knew exactly who you were, tell me that story in the comments. I read every single one. The birds chose your yard for a reason. Now it is your turn to choose them back. Fix the mistakes, keep the faith, and let them know they are finally safe here.